Yeah, good. Okay. And let's see here. Okay, this is an interesting one. What do I hope for those of you who are training in Aikido? I want you to observe the way the world works. Heed the words of wise people. Take the good points you find and make them your own. Open your own door to the truth. Awaken to the true nature of the world. Awaken to your own true nature. Realize, reflect, act. Do this continually and you will make steady progress. And the next part is what I really wanted to get to, but that first part kind of says something. Observe a stream as it winds its way through a valley. The water smoothly flowing around the rocks, endlessly transforming itself. So just one more time on that last one. Observe a stream as it winds its way through the valley, the water smoothly flowing around the rocks, endlessly transforming itself. Okay? So, it's just something I kind of wanted to bring forth a little bit. So what the water might represent, smoothly, but endlessly transforming itself. See, if the water kind of sits, it becomes stagnant. But in the movement of it, it stays kind of clean. If we stop it, it's initially okay. But then potentially pollution starts. But it's endlessly transforming itself. Okay? So he might have been talking about consciousness. I mean, motion. We're going to do something. But the way the water moves, it adapts to rocks. It goes between the rocks, possibly under the rocks, over the rock. And in doing that, in motion, it's endlessly transforming itself. And that motion, and in motion, there's a kind of a purity to the water. And when the water kind of sets, there's the possibility for the water to acquire other stuff that would distort that sense of endless transformation. Now, it's not just moving to be busy to move, but it's really something that, and whether we're going to apply that to breath, or even sitting in a very still pose. It's like the consciousness is constantly moving, transforming itself. The Osensei did a class, I guess, on Friday, where he was going into self. Okay. And my basic sense of it, there's self in what we call the universe, the creation, is like that description of the water. There's probably a place in where there is no sense of itself where it doesn't move. But when we set on something, like set to fight or set to oppose or whatever it is. We depart from that. Adaptability. And that feeling is moving, is endlessly transforming constantly. So the ability, for example, to kind of sit, but that endless transformation is going on, so that quiet or that still is extreme. It represents kind of the purity of the water. You know, that was just something that hit me the other day. You know, for example, something like Tai Chi. It's a form, but the actual energy or the consciousness of practicing that. And so that's what we're somewhat aspiring to. And there is pollution, okay? Maybe one way of looking at it. When I'm in a thought process, I'm not with that original sense of the water moving, adapting, constantly transforming. But, you know, you have a polluted system, you're going to have to create technology to work towards cleaning it. So we are going to think, we're going to learn forms. But then there's that original sense, constantly moving, constantly adapting, endlessly transforming itself. And that part of it's always been a real attractive thing to me. Let me just check. Okay, yes. Okay. Just checking to see if we have an audience today, which we do. So, this is something that I normally do to set up, but obviously I did not do, which is put this lens cap on, which allows a full body shot at a closer distance. And so, for example, by inserting this here, I'm standing pretty much the same place, but you see more of me, okay? Let's drop this a bit. I'll pick up something here. I'm using this because, you know, I like the image of the water, the stream. And if I pick up something else, I kind of tend to set. So now I'm going to do this motion. I'm do this motion. Right? And what we're looking at is what was the Bruce said? Be like water, or be like that stream. So I'm doing a little. I do a lot of this on my own. So can I be like that water in the stream? In other words, there's a rock or something. Instead of colliding with the rock, I'm going to go around. Or I can go under it to some degree. And go around it from the other side and go on top of it. Of course, these are forms. They're learned forms. That's a little bit like you've got a polluted stream. Okay, you're gonna have to create a technology to clean it. Okay? And to some degree, that all you're doing is lessening the pollution. But the mental activity is like that. Learn this movement. But boom, there's that area for example. Get to that place where water, just the movement is endlessly transforming itself, adapting to the rocks, going over, under it. So when Bruce Lee said, be like water. And here I am, I'm kind of a stagnant pool. Eventually stuff is going to gather. But the motion of it starts to there's a purity that's retained, but it's the original nature of the stream and motion. And due to outside influences, there could be pollution, which means we are going to have to learn, acquire a technology to help us clean the stream. And there'll be better technology and better technology. And there's also the stream getting cleaner, okay? But there's that original nature, where before all that pollution, that stream would move around the rocks, and the water moving, or just in motion, be endlessly transforming itself. And in that endless motion transformation, there would be a purity that would be there. Okay? So, looking at that motion, that motion, that motion, that motion, that motion, that. It's a stream moving between rock and this rock and that rock and having to transform itself. And maybe I can't do that originally. So I'm going to learn certain patterns. Like we do the thumb down, thumb up, figure eight, thumb up, thumb down, figure eight, up, thumb down. I like this feeling here where the water just is transformed. There's an attack. I mean, you're moving around the intention of that. And when I'm unencumbered with a lot of thought, and the motion starts to kind of pick itself up. There's a type of swiftness to the motion, not necessarily fast, but fast. So, what I'm doing a little bit is realizing that a lot of what's polluting the stream, which you might call the movement of ki, is my own mind being too busy. And yeah, there's pollution there, so I got to create some technology to clean it out. So there's going to be conscious thought. There's going to be boom, the movement of form. But there's that original nature of the stream. Boom, 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 boom. So I'd like you to do a little bit. So these are patterns that we work on. It's a thrust pattern. It's a striking pattern. I like the sense that even though this is short, I'm working not as staff, but I'm working with a spear point. And I do this a lot because I'm holding something that's a bit more martial. My thoughts go into a certain area. Yes, it is martial. But we go through it. So what I'd like you to do is just begin to move. Generally it starts with a form. in that form, maybe in several. We have a 30 movement set, which we'll probably get into later. There's nothing wrong with the form. In fact, the form itself is a technology to help us clean out the stream. So capture that feeling. A stream moving through the valley, moving through the rocks, and endlessly transforming itself as it moves. And just pause for a bit, kind of check in. Time there. So it's one of my favorite quotes in the Secret Teachings book. Okay. Anybody with a sense, in other words, moving? Anybody with a, how that might relate to? Okay. Cliff, any observations?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the stream in the metaphor achieves fluidity and movement around the rocks unconsciously without putting effort into it or thinking about it. But I know I was doing the staff, I've got my kids home, I've got furniture, and I'm very consciously moving.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I mean, I'm sure some part of it that's unconscious, the parental instinct not to accidentally whack your kid with a stick, for example. But I'm also being very, very conscious about it. So that strikes me as, I don't know if it's lesser, but it's different from what Osensei is describing, which seems to be an unconscious fluidity that is just where it needs to be. It's very, very Zen, very Taoist kind of take.
Well, I think at some point, for example, you do have a situation, right? You're at home, you have kids move in and out, there's activity. The challenge is to come from that fluidity amidst all that. If I'm too occupied, I might bump into something, knock it down, trash it. On the other hand, if I'm like the water, I don't destroy the rocks, do I? So, you know, there's an area where endless transformation doesn't include like, okay, now I've got to do this. Now I got to worry about that. What you find sometimes is the world kind of puts these things out. And, you know, it just really can distract you. Okay. And it can be frustrating. But there is that sense. The challenge then becomes, here come the kids. Let's flow around and stay in that place. Because for me, that's a very alive, a loving space. Being with your child, as opposed to being annoyed by your child. That's the right there.
That's the yin and yang of it, I think. But
yeah, that part of it right there. See, we're kind of like that stream, okay? That's our true nature, or some level of it. And then we have all these habits that pollute it. And so, as that goes, we go, okay. Then I got to create certain things to clean the stream out. And then I get better at it, and then all of a sudden I forget, and then there's more pollution. But maybe there's a state there where we're just present, easy. But with all this whining around and constant transformation, there's still a focus. And, ideally, this is something, that I'm obviously working on myself, is that when I'm in that place of, of like constant transformation, where things are new and in the moment, bumping into your kids is, you treat yourself and you treat your kids better. We're going to find ourselves in situations where, oh darn, I could do all this, but now I'm kind of trapped by this situation or that situation. So the situation is a situation. That's kind of like the rocks. Okay. The question is, are we going to keep hitting the rocks, or we're going to be like the water? And in doing that stream in motion through the rocks, water's infinitely transforming itself within that situation. So that would be my model, which obviously I'm still working on. Okay. So, anything else on that, or? That's hard, by the way. What you're describing is what we all run into.
Yet, the other thing that I kind of was noticing about the metaphor, and this is with my tendency to overthink things, but I think it's real. The one thing that the effect the stream has on the rock is it smooths them.
Yeah.
So you could say in this metaphor that if the river represents someone acting, with purity of intent and purity of action, then the people and objects around them their rough edges get smoothed just by the presence of this one person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that also has a positive effect on the environment.
Yeah. I think that's why Osensei was talking about the world as one family. If enough of us sort of got that more original sense of who we are, then we would smooth things out with one another, and the world would move towards that. And instead, there's a lot of sharp edges. I mean, if you look at the world, look at the news, and all you see is sharp edges and points. Okay. And you can get into this some kind of a floaty. Well, that's an ideal. Then you come crashing down here. But the real game is say, okay, as much as possible within what you might call the situations we run into. We're kind of like that stream and that water. And that a lot of the pollution is just the busy mind, the I mind, and the reaction of the emotional sense to what's going on out there, then it just keeps buzzing around and the stream gets more polluted, but we're saying, okay, at least for a moment. So the ability to clear or calm or center or take a deep cleansing breath, those are valuable. Okay, anybody else with anything to add on that? Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes. It's not a complex, and a lot of the stuff in that book is like dealing with, like theoretical physics. But that by itself is a very tangible sense, feel of that state that we might, as we approach more what Shiva, the founder was, we might begin to realize in ourselves. See, for me, if you, Nick, I was watching the Friday broadcast with the Osensei, which I actually liked. Okay, I did. But then you get people talking about self. And everything you talk about self, you have to describe self. When you describe self, to some degree, you're polluting the stream, because that stream and its endless transformations is self. That's my thought. So yeah, you can say you're like calmer. Well, okay, that's a good description. There's a harmony to the water as it endlessly transforms itself. But it's in constant motion. The second I say, it's this or that, I start to pollute the stream. Water sets, things accumulate, it's not in its state of purity. That would be my sense. I mean, I'm not gonna go on there and say, you people are totally screwed, because that sort of thing. Just let them, because all those things are like, okay, yeah, it's calmer. Okay, that's part of the technology to help clean the stream up. Well, I center, okay, good. Well, I feel like balance. Those are all good. But they're all constantly in motion, changing. They're like that water, and to me, that's what self is. Okay, it can be over here, it can be over here. Boom, you're fluid. Boom. And there's a power that comes from that amount of freedom. If you're going to do it, that's about 8 different moves. If I have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, I don't think I can even do it. But we can create another 10, 12 moves. The water just moves. And it constantly in its motion is transforming itself. So the stream has a purity, it's clean, which is what we're aspiring to, I think. But then we get derailed because, situations out there create these thoughts, which create a certain sort of pollution, which then again, we Aikido, I think for most people, is just a technology to kind of clean the stream out, which is good. But there's that original sense of the stream in its own purity as it moves and instantly transforms. I really love the words, but you've got to go past the words to what the Osensei calls, it's a sense. It's not just knowledge, the words I like. But that motion. Rocks, boom, water just moves, boom. And even sitting here, there's this sense that the aliveness of that stream transforming itself is going on. And when I'm doing that, I'm not creating as much pollution. I'm over time to create less and less pollution and aspire to the original purity of that stream. For me, that's what self is. Then you pick this up, okay? So you can go this way, okay, it's a weapon, or you can go, I can just drift off. No, the stream is constantly with itself as it transforms. So, the actual sense of things is, one way, it's kind of a dance, but it also is a very challenging dance. Okay? Let's. Some motion. Now, what we're doing here, thumb down from the top, thumb up from the bottom. Figure 8. Thumb up from the bottom, thumb down from the top. Figure 8. And you can then, repeat that pattern, or you can figure 8. And then right about, you can start to do the figure 8 with 2 hands. 2-hand figure 8 is actually much more challenging. Figure 8, thumb up from the bottom, thumb down from the top. Figure 8, thumb up from the bottom, thumb down from the top. And even to the knowledge, okay, I'm going to build something to clean the water up. But in building it, it's disturbing the naturalness of it, which of course maybe we need to create a technology to get back to more natural state. So that's true. Let's try to do it from both directions. Sort of learns. But what's the value of this motion? Well, for one thing, a lot of Aikido techniques. Thumb down from the bottom. It's called a reverse kotegaishi. Thumb up from the bottom. And you can think of the string of ki, but also the string is constantly, endlessly transforming itself as it moves. Now I'm going to try that. I get really confused. Okay, and that's natural given the way we are. Okay, but one of the reasons I'm so confused is that there's this pollution going on in my own head. Believe it or not, I want to learn this. I'm getting in the way. Yes, right. This change, this change, this change, that change. What's that water? You see right here, I think. You see right here, for example, you see kotegaishi, don't you? Come down from the top, you see the beginnings of a Nikyo or Nikyo chain. It can be very, river, stream is maybe not, but river can be very deep. But down there, that water, even though it doesn't seem to be moving very fast, is moving very fast. So when I do this sort of stuff, there's all this stuff going on out here. It's more difficult for me when I'm in the state to get that way with things. Even if it's walking around, you get water out of it. No. You know, this motion can reverse itself. This motion can reverse itself. So most of the changes, some version of it to the figure eight, then I make the changes. That's the trying to lessen the amount of pollution and putting into the system. A certain amount of it's necessary. But that original concept is truly necessary. And if I'm a jagged rock there, I'm creating a lot of variations for the water to go there. And eventually, the water just moving and not resisting my jet point. It's going to smooth that point out. So that was what Cliff said right there was a very, very good statement. Okay. Yeah, so that was a second go around. But you know that quote that Osensei had, the stream in the valley. So when somebody kind of goes, and grabs on, there's a tendency to, that. And you might not, but that's a big rock, but the water will eventually get around it or go over it. And then it'll divide into various other tributaries. See what I mean? It's a point where a lot of training. What's the purpose of the rock? Well, it's to obstruct the water. It doesn't obstruct the stream. What does obstruct, we're talking about a different level of ourselves as a stream, is the pollution. Okay? I can create a dam. I don't know what's there. All of a sudden, you cut the stream off. The hands, start to create various shapes, like for example, here we're going towards an EQ or an EQ. But even here, so you start to think in terms of the whole as increments that just sort of are like that water endlessly transforming itself. In the process, there's a personal transformation that happens. There's a quote in, I think, a book called The Power of Silence by Carlos Castaneda. And it was actually made into a PBS special called The Power of Intent. And the quote was something like, everything in the universe is connected to itself through a connecting link. And that link is called intent. But that living at normal levels of consciousness is very toxic, so that the link itself becomes almost useless. And so talking about shamanism or sorcery or contacting what we call the more marvelous possibilities present in the universe, we learn to clean that connecting link. And so, Don Juan tells Carlos, that's the basis of what we call sorcery or shamanism. And so as we see, Osensei said it, he said, Aikido is misogi. We're both the original stream, moving perfectly, endlessly transforming itself. And we're also living here at potentially very ordinary levels of consciousness that kind of corrodes or pollutes that link. So a lot of what we're doing here is just simply saying, okay, let's just put a little time in cleaning that link. And, the movements of Aikido can be for exercise or self-defense, or it can allow you to interact with people in a very pleasant way, which is nice. But there's also that sense of the endless transformation. I transformed. I used to be a dada, but now I'm a didi. Well, that's good. But why stop with dada, the didi? I'm starting to talk like somebody that Osensei likes to talk that way. But if we're kind of in an infinite state of transformation, it's kind of like that stream. To some degree, you see the stream stays clean, doesn't it? So, I like working with this sometimes because, okay, I'm going to pick a sword up, I'm going to pick a spear up, I'm going to pick a stick up. And this doesn't lock me in. In fact, apparently, Osensei had his own sort of, what might call the prayer stick, where he would these various rituals. It could be could use it as a sword, or use it as a staff, or use it as a spear. Okay. And it's always around you. It's always very close, according to what the Osensei said. And Ano Sensei said that when Osensei traveled all the way from Tokyo to Shingu, and a lot of that was probably before a lot of the really advanced trains were built, which means you went put, pa, 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 pa. There was a certain sort of cadence to pa, 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 pa. I used to take the sleeper train from Shingu, to go to Tokyo to fly out of Japan. So you just go pa, 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 pa. You wait, you go to sleep in Shingu or thereabouts, you wake up in Tokyo. All right, sleeper train. So see, we're not going to clean the environment up, because really, with the pollution of the environment, is really because of the interior pollution. If we clean this up collectively, the environment will get better. Because if you look at what's going on in the world, likewise, political things, so it's all these jagged edges among this and that, And which mirrors jagged edges in us. We're not going to unite out there with all these opposing jagged edges somehow smoothing out until we smooth out the jagged edges in here. That's why, since they created Aikido, he didn't create Aikido for reasons to just teach people how to do a form of jujitsu. He created Aikido as we clean this up, a lot of the stuff out there is supposed to also fix itself up. So that becomes, then the game again becomes, well, the victory is an interior one. Anybody with a question or comment on that? I mean, it's stuff we all know. That's the other thing. We all know this stuff. But again, the words, the stream, the endless transformation, that's beautiful. But to not keep it at the level of word, but to acquire a sense of the word, get into more of the feeling behind the words. Anybody? Okay.
This
Yes.
is a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize, but no one else was speaking.
Yeah.
I think, the thing is, we all want to be like Osensei and be like that river.
Yeah.
And we read about it and we go, oh, that's cool. I want to be like that. I'll keep training and training and training. Right. And it just feels like mirage on the horizon, or an infinitely receding horizon. Like, I train, and I guess after all the years of training, I maybe 5% like this river, if I'm being generous, right? And I look at, say, like, how soon am I going? It's like the fourth enemy of the Carlos Castaneda talked about, old age, right? Like, how far toward the river can I get before I die of old age?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. But I think what's kind of interesting about it is old age is really like the water stopping and getting polluted, and it just keeps getting more polluted. And to the degree to which you are that stream, your body's going to age. But the degree where I'm thinking normal thoughts, reacting to everyday reality out there in a normal way, it's toxic. Doesn't mean, we basically, things are beginning to sort of open up around the pandemic. But that year plus that we spent kind of just, that's a real situation out there. But there's potential for growth in certain other areas, and so the thing that Don Juan said, because it really goes down to intent. And one of the quotes I remember, he just says, one direction, there's what's called ordinary reality. And the other direction is what he called non-ordinary reality. So the gateway is intention. We're all going to spend time in ordinary reality, thinking these thoughts, polluting the stream. It's going to happen. But there's also another switch that says, okay, see, the point is, I'm talking here, I'm going to stand up. I've got to stand up. But click, boom. I can also float up. And here, I'm sitting here. But here I can be sort of still, but not set. The stream's a stream. Water is transforming and moving, keeping itself pure. The stream's a stream. How long can I hold that? That's another question. But I think the challenge is like, okay, ordinary reality, but we realize that's what it is. And we spend time in it. And that doesn't have to further corrode the link. You see what I mean? Yeah. I think Osensei had his stuff where, the Do Sensei said, the thing that he realized, a lot of people didn't. And not to say that he's the only one that realized it. Okay. So Osensei was working a process. He would chant, he would do his stuff with the staff or the spear or the sword. And he would recenter, recalibrate, re-immerse, re-soak. Oh, he was right back. And so, that part of it I always thought was very interesting. And the way that Don Juan put it, he used terms like he used the term initially, hunter. You're hunting something. But a warrior is somebody who's hunting enlightenment, that finer level of oneself. And so there's this ordinary reality stuff is there, and it will throw us, but we get back up. And we spend time. In fact, I think it's from the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna's advice to Arjuna, Krishna the sage and Arjuna the warrior. And what Krishna told Arjuna is it's a secret of immortality is to know thyself as the river. So similar. Water will pass and pass and pass and pass and pass. But the river is the river. The stream, the water is just transforming. But looking at it that way is, okay, the stream is not a static state, but it's still a stream. And, we can get sort of like, oh, I've been watching the water go past. Where's my enlightenment? And so things like Aikido are good because they give us a chance to flip the switch a little bit. Look at things from a different perspective. And, there are other reasons to train. You may like the people you're working with, or you may be wanting to learn the techniques more, or you enjoy the movement through the body. Those are all good because they are putting us in a different state than that ordinary reality puts us in. So it's all potentially good. But, the ability see, there's that area. Okay, now I'm going to. You're already in it. Boom, 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 boom. So let me check. Yeah. Right. So anytime you're. The Do Sensei said that Osensei had several things. He had a fan. He had kind of his prayer stick. He had a book. And the sense was, it's so easy to get caught up out there. These are reminders. Flip the switch. It's a book. Flip the switch. It's a fan. Flip the switch. And just be able to spend some time kind of in this, I would call it pure, more original state. See, one of the reasons why, it's a very important saying. If you're too tight, that amount of freedom transformation is kind of scary. I want to do that, but I want to hold on to a bunch of stuff. Then you're one of those sharp rocks getting worn down. And from your perspective, you want your sharp And the water is just kind of smoothing you out. So there's this kind of what Osensei called, the Nenu, land of the roots, which, it's kind of like he just says that there's the graveyard. There's just a graveyard. Old ideas we have about ourselves go to there to kind of pass on. And that's scary. Don Juan also says that, you're a warrior. I mean, he or she who is hunting enlightenment, true power, true essence, whatever you want to call it. There's both terror and wonder. To really let go to that level where things are that fluid, where you have the ability to change on a moment's notice. See, if I define myself by everything I hold on to, that's scary. So as we go on, sometimes you hit something, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of scared there. And you could think of it as a dark monster, but that amount of freedom, fluidity, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, awakening, is really scary to to what I'm holding on to. So, those are just a couple of observations. So we kind of did some movement. Anytime you pick this up, nothing wrong with what we call form. You got a minute or two, okay? So we go through movement number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's both up and down. 8, we drop. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30. Okay. Now, what I would kind of say is if you kind of want to loosen up a little bit, start working on movement number 22, 23. And as you kind of get a little bit more there, you're sort of getting the sense, initially you're learning more complex pattern movement, but you kind of let go, then it starts to, what I would, my description of it is that things begin to talk you through emotion. And what I kind of like about putting time in with this one, what was I doing during the pandemic? Most of the time, just worrying about what Donald Trump was going to do next. So I would do this, right? Because, in a sense that, okay, got to keep them. But there's also this. And they're both there. Because the way Don Juan put, there's ordinary reality and there's non-ordinary. Or Osensei might say, the hidden dimensions, the hidden world, dimensionality, eventually the divine realm, the heavenly realm. And there's also, the Genkai, which is the world, it's the ordinary reality. Yeah, we're here. But we're going to keep our connecting link kind of clean. Okay? Let's see. So we're right about there. Anybody with a question before we go. So, practice. 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 Right? And I like that place. That stream through the valley, the water constantly transforming itself. Okay, all right, we'll call it for today. Okay, as you can see, we're kind of more settled in now. So Ella's back from the hospital and the nursing home. So here we are. Okay.